good day. If you're watching this video, it means that you're considering a DSO for your club. And it's important when considering the DSO to just apply the right kind of thinking in terms of who the person is going to be. And it's important that we choose the right person, because if we don't, then we're really going to battle to get those safeguarding strategies correct. So the first thing I want to address is the difference between safety and safeguarding. A safeguarding officer is not the same as a safety officer. The safety officer is there to ensure that as a result of the sport, as a result of training in the sport, as a result of people socializing at your club, that everyone is safe. And generally that's addressed through the Occupational Health and Safety Act or the rules of the sport. So for example, if I use a certain sport like rugby, the safety officer would be the ref, who would make sure that the person on the field is behaving in a way that doesn't endanger other players. Safety within, for example, gymnastics, maybe padding or mats that are put down to make sure that the athletes don't get hurt. And maybe in a sport like canoeing, there would be a necessity to have a life jacket or a helmet to make sure, again, that the athletes don't get hurt as a result of training or competing. With regard to safeguarding, it's an understanding that there needs to be a relationship that would develop between a coach and an athlete, or a volunteer and an athlete, or a service provider. And so what we need to do as clubs is we need to ensure that any relationship that develops, the ability for that relationship to become toxic is mitigated as far as possible. And that is what the designated safeguarding officer is responsible for. They would be, at the end of the training, have the ability to identify the best practices that need to be implemented into the club to ensure that safeguarding is adhered to. So how do we choose this person? Well, first and foremost, it's quite important that the person isn't conflict averse. Very simply because if they are members of the club that transgress that code or the policy, the DSO needs to be someone who's able to call them out and kind of go, this behavior needs to stop. That may be, for example, using the cell phone in the change room. That's the first thing. The second thing that we need to bear in mind is that our experience says that a person who is a little more mature tends to be better positioned when doing this job. Very simply because sometimes there are members that have been members of the club for 20, 30 years, and for them to be told that they can't do something that they've done for the last 10 years by someone who's 21 or 22 just doesn't go down very well. So that's not to say a younger person can't be your DSO, but in all honesty, we tend to find that someone who's a bit more mature, a bit more known in the club tends to be better at in that whole space. The other thing to bear in mind is that there are very real responsibilities that need to happen. Things like ensuring all the coaches are cleared against the sex offenders register, ensuring that the communication posters have been put up in and around the club, etc., etc., etc. And the DSO will be trained and coached on all of that. Then the final part of the equation, and I suppose arguably one of the most important, is ensuring that the club chairperson and the club executive empower that DSO, so much so that it is probably most valuable for the executive to make a decision that the board or the committee of the club will include a position of designated safeguarding officer. Very simply because that person may need access to things like budgets. That person needs to be a part of planning for tours. That person needs to be ensuring that communication is going out to everybody. And really, if we've got the whole committee signing off on that, then it makes it a lot easier for the DSO to implement. And so a DSO that doesn't have the backing of the committee, or a committee that's just made the appointment to tick a box, really makes that DSO's job difficult. And for all intents and purposes, really kind of creates an environment where safeguarding just becomes something that is done and it really isn't bought into for the culture of the club. So I hope that helps you understand and hopes you give some insight into who you should choose. If you've got any questions, please reach out to us, sport@theguardian.co.za, and we can get back to you and help you make that decision. Have a good day.